Warning! Warning! This podcast contains spoilers.
Listen at your own risk.
Welcome to Medium Shift, the podcast that investigates how stories stack up from medium to medium through the adaptation process.
In today's episode, we trust the fungus in Super Mario Bros.
Welcome to Medium Shift. I'm Chris.
And I'm Luigi.
So it begins. This episode we are talking about the infamous, I think is the best word to describe it, the infamous 1993 big screen adaptation of Super Mario Bros. Called Super Mario Bros. This is a movie that has been on our list for a long time for obvious reasons. Let's just get into it. What do you think of Super Mario Bros.?
It's a surrealist masterpiece, or the worst thing that's ever existed, and I can't make up my mind.
See, this is interesting, because, I mean, obviously we talk about this a lot when we go into movies like this, that, you know, preconceptions always have such a fundamental effect on how you perceive a movie. And this movie, for me, has always gone through like a weird transitional period where, for the longest time, it was constantly described to me as one of the worst movies ever made, one of the weirdest movies, and, like, pointless, stupid films ever. And yet, seeing it and like reading about it now in preparation for this podcast, apparently a lot of people think of this as like a cult film. Like, I don't know, in recent years, apparently people have begun to appreciate it in certain weird and unique ways in a way that I never would have expected for a movie as stupid and surreal as the Super Mario Bros. Film. So, anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself at the very least, but what was your first impression when you first saw Super Mario Bros.?
Well, I had a lot of those sort of preconceived expectations of it being terrible and it being weird and surreal.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd seen the images of the Goombas that still haunt my nightmares.
Horrifying. Yep.
But I watched it basically in a movie theatre at PAX Australia, the big video game convention, with a room full of people also not taking it seriously, and people making jokes about it, and some of my favourite YouTube video game comedians just sitting like a metre away from me, also cracking jokes. And so from that perspective, it was really fun, because it was just so weirdly absurd, and you didn't know where it was going. And, like, everything was sponsored by Reebok, which is, like, so 90s.
This movie is incredibly of its time, and we'll get into some of, like, the cinematic influences that he's drawing from, even more than the games in some respects. But no, I mean, I think the way you described it to me almost in some ways, it sounds like a showing of The Room.
Kind of.
Yeah, like one of those midnight showings where people show up and throw plastic spoons at the screen. Yeah, I could totally see people having a great time with this movie in that respect, yeah.
And I heard a lot of people say it's the worst video game adaptation of all time, but even watching it, even without that whole sort of surreal, laughing at it room type perspective, I still don't actually think it's the worst video game adaptation, even at the time of its release, I'd say.
No, well, it was the first video game adaptation, technically.
Technically, yeah. Looking at it now, there is things way worse, just because they are so bland, and they don't do any. They either copy things exactly and make things worse, or they take things in a different direction, but not far enough, like this movie did, to actually make it worth commenting on.
Sure. Yeah.
So yeah, I actually do now think it is one of the better adaptations, purely because it is no longer an adaptation.
That is true.
It is the strictest sense of the words.
It is loosely inspired by the original games, if at all. I think there is a very interesting point to be made there. People kind of talk about this almost inverted bell curve when it comes to film quality, where movies that are just okay and just kind of boring are kind of the worst movies in some respects. And that once a movie gets really, really good, it's really entertaining. But if a movie's really, really bad in some ways, it can also be incredibly entertaining. And I think you are right in that Mario Bros. Kind of fits into that respect, in that I have seen boring bland, forgettable video game movies the world over and over again. But I did not have that experience at all watching this film. So I should preface this: I only saw this film last night in preparation to this episode. I'd never seen it before, and it's bad. It's really bad, but it's so weird and outlandish in some of its creative ideas that I have to kind of admire it in some ways. That doesn't make it a good film, and I think there's a whole lot of weird different things going behind it, and it had such a disastrous production in so many respects, which we'll obviously get into. But I think there is enough strange and surreal and in many ways entertaining stuff here that I can't say that this is a movie completely worth avoiding, even if I cannot say it is good in many respects of that word. So
I feel like the biggest adaptation part of what they did was they looked at the game, went, okay, he eats mushrooms. We'll eat mushrooms before we make this script.
Yep. Yeah. On shrooms. Yeah. I mean, the way they described Dino Hatton, that was what it was called, right?
Yeah.
Manhattan? Yeah. It is Manhattan except on shrooms. Like, that is a quote from the screenwriters or the directors. I can't remember who. But yeah, like, that is the mindset going into this movie. And I can kind of see it in some respects. It is weird and kind of gross and very strange in some ways, but the fact that it is so different and so wacky and so loosely inspired by the game, I have to admire it in that respect, because it almost feels like an original property in some ways. Just not anything very good, which is kind of the problem.
This is the first time that I've heard a story of the lead actor coming to set drunk and going, you know what? I respect that decision.
Yep. For like, especially if you've seen this movie, you probably know about a lot of the production stuff behind it. But it was disastrous in that several people took run at the scripts. A lot of them were very adult oriented.
Yes.
There was one from the writer of Rain Man who basically turned Rain Man into a Mario Bros film to the point where the production title for it was called Drain Man. Did you hear about that? Yeah, that was the working title, because apparently the original script he put for this film was so ridiculously similar to Rain Man that they just started playing off it, basically. But then they took it in a different direction, and they took it in this more weird, kind of surreal, adult-oriented way. But then just before production was about to start, the studio basically came in and said, no, this is too strange and too dark, and we need to make this more light and kid-friendly. And so the end product is kind of a weird combination of, like, intense studio interference with incompetent directors, to directors that were literally rewriting the script day in and day out, to the point that the actors just stopped paying attention to what the script had turned into. And clearly, like, a lot of this mess of production is very apparent on screen, in that it's tonally weird and all over the place, and it's trying to be silly and goofy and for the kids in one respects, and also having someone turned into a giant fungus hanging from the ceiling in another scene. So, like, there's a whole mess and shamble of things where it's clearly trying to be a lot of things when it's none of those things at the same time. But that combination is weird enough that, once again, it's interesting.
Yeah.
Which is weird. I still struggle to recommend it, but I think there is... It's kind of like watching a train crash, or like in slow motion. Like, it's gross and it's weird and it's horrifying, but you can't really look away. And I can't help but admire that in some respects.
Yeah, I think you summed it up perfectly. There's so many things that don't make sense. And part of me that really confuses me when I first watch this, because I know it's not entirely relevant to this whole situation, but I gotta get it out there. They have Princess Daisy, but no mention of Peach at all.
Yeah, well, I think that's because, like, she was set up as the love interest for Luigi.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
But having no reference to Peach at all...
Yeah.
Just threw me. Like, at least make the hairdresser that's the romantic interest for Mario, at least make a passing reference to her being a Peach or something.
Yeah, or even just make her name Peach.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, it's super strange in that, like, Peach is one of the like, we'll get into this when we get into the adaptation at the very least, but, like, the fundamental elements of the original Mario Bros. Game was 3 characters: Mario, Bowser, and Peach.
Yeah.
You're missing one of those characters in this adaptation, and for some reason you've gone for the weird offshoot of it, of her, which is just... There's a lot of very strange creative decisions here, certainly, and I think a lot of it is... Apparently the directors on this film were also wildly incompetent, according to a lot of talk as well.
No.
Apparently they were shot out of post-production. Like, they literally couldn't get into the editing room, and sometimes because the studio basically took it over. A lot of the actors have talked since then, like in subsequent decades, about how kind of controlling and antagonistic they were on sets and how frustrating they were to work with. Hence the reason that the two leads constantly showed up on set drunk just to get through production for it. And apparently what I think is quite interesting as well is that the directors were not at all interested in the fact that it is based on Super Mario Bros. And that they were just kind of trying to draw cinematic inspiration from other popular franchises at the time.
Is it Blade Runner? I have a feeling it's Blade Runner.
A little bit of Blade Runner, but watching this movie, I felt it was more trying to be like 89 Batman,
Yes.
TMNT, Ghostbusters as well. Apparently Ghostbusters was a big inspiration, that it was supposed to be kind of like a creepy, supernatural, kind of grungy comedy film. Because especially the first part of the film, like when they were in Manhattan, looks really, it's shot really, really similarly, and the production is incredibly similar to Ghostbusters.
Now they mention and the final battle, where it's essentially them with a big ray facing a giant T-Rex.
Yeah, essentially.
That could easily just be the Marshmallow Man, who then explodes. Both of them turn to goo.
Yep. And the way they portray Dino Hatton could basically be an Elseworlds version of Gotham City.
Yeah.
Like the really gothic Gotham City of Batman 89. So,
yep.
And TMNT, once again, it's really clear because they're wandering around all in the sewers and it's weird and grossing with the ooze and everything. So once again, I don't think this is trying at all to be a Mario Bros. Adaptation. I think this is trying to be a weird conglomerate of a bunch of different, like, the hip things of the time. More so than anything. And I think that's there was a lot of studio interference in this film, and I really think that kind of comes across in the inspiration, that it's less interested in trying to faithfully adapt the game and more trying to just make it like the other popular things that are popular right now to make us money. So yeah, it's bad.
And I think it's pretty telling that essentially there were two live-action Mario adaptations in the 80s, and then nothing was touched again until very recently, even the thought of doing a live-action adaptation of Mario.
Oh yeah, this killed any possibility of any of Nintendo's other franchises being turned into films. That streak was broken this year with Detective Pikachu. Well, the year that we are recording this episode. Don't know when this is going out. So apparently they've been talking for a while that there was going to be a Metroid film coming out and things like that. But this basically soured Nintendo on making another film based on their properties for the longest time. And it's not hard to see why, especially considering this movie at the time was a massive financial and critical disappointment. This movie did not recoup its budget or anything. It was a disastrous production. Both the directors have barely made anything since, and barely had made anything beforehand as well, honestly. Same with the screenwriters. So it's just this was a whole dumpster fire of a thing, which once again makes it really interesting that people have kind of turned around to have this newfound appreciation for it years on. So, yeah. I
think part of that also owes to the fact that it is incredibly hard to actually get a hold of. Like, there's the Super Mario Bros. Archives, who were, like, trying to piece together everything. They've got the full movie. They've got, like, an extended cut they've only recently now just got their hands on. And it is incredibly difficult to locate. And I think that's the same reason. It's also a very similar reason to why the Super Mario Bros. Porn parody also has essentially a weird cult following, because it too is a super surreal thing that was bought out by Nintendo, so it did not get distributed. That they own the rights and the intellectual property to the porn parody of their thing, purely so they can stop it from reaching their hands. And because of that, it developed its own cult following.
That's so funny. There is a term for it. I don't remember what it is now, but it's when you try and make something scarce on the internet, like you try and basically pull an image or something like that, it just proliferates it even
The Streisand
more.
effect.
Yeah, that's the one. That's what I'm trying to think of. Yeah, I mean, it happens a lot with like censorship with government and things like that. Like Tiananmen Square is a great example. The more that kind of gets cut from the internet, the more just people constantly post it and things like that. And I think media in a lot of ways work the same. Like the one I can also think about was, do you remember the Seth Rogen comedy, The Interview?
Yes.
The one that pissed off North Korea? Yeah. No one would have cared about the movie at all when it came out if it wasn't because of the scandal around it. But the reason that it was pulled from cinemas and then digitally distributed, and it was suddenly a massive hit because everyone wanted to watch it, was because of that, was because it was so scarce. And I wonder if that might be the case for Super Mario Bros. As well, because this was a really hard film to track down too.
Yeah.
To watch. It's not on any streaming services or anything like that.
I tried to rewatch it in preparation for this, and I could not find it anywhere.
Yeah, it's not even available for purchase in Australia, which is really weird. It is available for purchase in the US, but for us, it's like, I don't know, intentionally scarce. And I assume Nintendo probably has something to do with that as well in some respects. Yeah, I mean, either that or the studio, which almost certainly buried it at the time. Yeah, big surprise. I mean, there's a lot of different interesting production things we can talk about regarding this film. Do we want to get into what is actually the same based on the game? Yep. I mean, look, we could talk about the Super Mario Bros. Franchise, but there are so many different versions of it and everything, and everyone kind of knows who the Mario Bros. Are, right? Like, they're in the zeitgeist. Everyone knows Mario and Luigi, and they've showed up in so many different games and so many different sequels and everything that if someone says Super Mario Bros., people generally know what you're talking about. I mean, there's definitely more obscure things in the lore of the Mushroom Kingdom that this film kind of draws on, but for the most part, like, yeah, like we don't need to go through every single version of Mario that has ever existed, but we can talk about the things that this film, like, clearly takes inspiration from in some respects. I mean, obviously, like Mario and Luigi, you know, brothers.
Plumbers.
Brothers, plumbers, that's all spot on from the games as well. They, weirdly enough, I don't know if this was intentional or not, but for the first, like, hour of the film, they're wearing opposite colours to each other.
Yeah, I noticed that as well.
Yeah.
I got super confused.
Yeah, and it's not until, I think it's because they're just trying to save it to, like, oh, the big reveal.
Yeah.
Like, in a superhero movie, when you suddenly see someone in the costume after, like, 40 or 50 minutes, that's what they were trying to do, but I just found it was super weird that Mario's running around in, like, a green hoodie. It's super weird. I'm so disappointed Luigi didn't have a mustache either. Yeah, honestly.
I don't know. John Leguizamo with a mustache kind of throws me a bit.
Yeah, that's fair, but still. So, I mean, all of that is accurate. The fact that Mario and Luigi exist in the real world is totally wrong. Like, all of the Super Mario Bros. Games take place in this fictional, a very, like, loose fantasy-inspired realm of the Mushroom Kingdom. What?
Except in the original, he actually did Mario transported from our world into the Mushroom Kingdom.
Oh, in relation to Donkey Kong? Or
in relation to Super Mario Bros., the original one.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
How does that work?
It wasn't really stated in the game, but it was in the manual. He, I don't know, I think went down some pipes or something.
Really? Are you sure?
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
Oh, okay. Interesting. I've never heard that part of the lore before. I mean, that might have been something that they retconned since then, I guess. A retcon in the Super Mario Bros. Universe.
And this was back at the time where all the story was told in manuals that were badly translated and nothing sort of made sense.
Yep,
so
that's
I can
very
see
true.
why it's all sort of all forgotten anyway.
Yeah. Fun fact that I do know about the original Super Mario Bros. Game is that the apparent story in the manual suggests that Bowser turned all of the toads or the denizens of the Mushroom Kingdom into the blocks that you were destroying throughout the game.
Yep.
Which puts a really, really horrifying connotation once you're going through and just breaking all these blocks to get to Bowser at the end, because you are murdering many, many people.
I do not realize why all the mountains and suns have eyes.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
The hills literally have eyes.
Yeah, the Mushroom Kingdom is a terrifying place in many respects.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And I'm very disappointed they didn't adapt some of those more surreal stuff into this film. Instead, they made new stuff up. Yeah.
How much more surreal could you get?
That's true. It's surreal, but it's not faithfully surreal. That's what I mean. It's
That is not a sentence I thought we'd say.
But I mean, it's true, right?
Yeah.
Like, we've talked about this in relation to other video games, but, like, the scripted narrative of, like, the overarching narrative of, like, most Mario games is very loose. It's all about the gameplay experience, right? So it's almost about always about exploring the world, and the world is very specifically designed to be played through, not to be a rational place where people go about their daily life and things like that, which is inherently makes it difficult to adapt because there is not a lot of story to adapt. It is mostly about the experience of playing, which makes it obviously like a little bit, it's kind of like the same way of adapting, say, like Pac-Man into a film. Like, there's a base narrative going on there where you're just trying to run away from the ghost. Why are you giving me that look?
Oh, no reason.
I'm a little bit concerned about that. Anyway, there's a base narrative there you can draw from that is like Mario trying to save Princess Peach, which is the classic hero's journey, which a lot of video game stories are based on, honestly, because it makes sense that you're progressing through levels the same way that the hero does through the hero's journey. But there's still not a lot of story to adapt there, essentially, which makes sense that you would have to diverge quite a bit for the film. But the way they diverge And the changes they make are so radically different from the game that it is interesting. Like, the whole notion of the Earth being split into two parallel dimensions because of the meteorite that apparently killed the dinosaurs, and this whole Dino Hatton that exists on like a parallel plane to Manhattan, and the fact that
have their own self-driving cars, effectively.
Yeah, essentially, and that like Bowser is the descendant of like a Tyrannosaurus Rex.
Yeah.
Everything in relation to dinosaurs in this movie basically is almost entirely original.
Aside from Yoshi, I guess.
Aside from Yoshi. And there is apparently, in Super Mario World, there is a dinosaur land, which apparently Dino Hatton was loosely based on, but incredibly loosely.
Okay.
Yeah, and for the most part, like, it is entirely original stuff. Yeah, certainly. Yeah, which I mean, like, so outside of that, let me see. Mario and Luigi, they're pretty accurate. Daisy, once again, the love interest for Luigi, who's kind of basically the second princess to save in the games.
Just a palette swap, effectively.
Yeah, basically. Bowser as well, who was always the main antagonist.
Yep.
Very, very, very different from this version of Bowser. In a lot of reasons. Bowser has never been a human in the games.
No.
Do they ever refer to him as Bowser in this film? They refer to him as King Koopa a lot.
No, which is his original name.
Yeah. Well, he was Bowser, King of the Koopas.
Yes.
Yeah,
but that got adapted in the US version to just King Koopa.
Just King Koopa. Yeah, certainly.
But yeah, no, I don't think they did. Or it was like a throwaway reference.
Yeah, potentially. But I mean, outside of that, like, I'm trying to think. So, I mean, they obviously allude to the Mushroom Kingdom through the fact that the king is turned into a mushroom, which is like a weird play on words for the Mushroom Kingdom. I don't know why they made that decision at all, even if it's explicitly a reference to the game. Who can say?
Yep.
Don't even know. A couple of like the items from the game also appear in the film, like the Bob-omb.
The Reebok branded Bob-omb.
Yeah. The boots, jumping boots, everything like that too. A couple of other like super things. Funny thing as well, the evolutionizing ray that they use in the film is a painted version of the Nintendo Super Scope.
Yes.
Yep.
Noticed that.
Which doesn't show up in any of the games. It shows up in Super Smash Bros. So I guess there's a connection there, but it is like kind of it's a more of a Nintendo Easter egg rather than anything. Outside of that, is there anything else that they explicitly draw from the games? Yoshi, as you mentioned too. Yeah. I was actually kind of impressed by the puppetry on Yoshi, honestly. It reminded me of the it was the same year, but like the raptors in Jurassic Park.
Oh, yeah.
Apparently a couple of the people from Jurassic Park came on and were really impressed with the puppetry and almost hired some of those people to work on the sequel for that film, which I found was kind of interesting. Don't know if any of that actually panned out. And he still looks kind of creepy.
Yep.
I don't know. I mean, it's very different. The Yoshi in the game is like super cartoon.
Yes.
And green. Has a long tongue as well, actually. That's another thing they adapted for the film. Once again, it's almost like lip service all over. Toad. That's right.
Yes.
Toad is the same.
Really?
The same name?
Yeah.
He wears a hat that kind of looks like a mushroom. Once.
Kind of, but for some reason he's human and not a mushroom person.
And then he gets turned into a Koopa anyway, so...
A Goomba.
Sorry. Oh, yeah, the Goombas are from the game as well.
Yes,
but once again,
but also
name only.
Name only.
Yep.
Oh, God, they're horrifying.
They're really creepy. I mean,
and like the opposite of a video game Goomba, because their heads are so small and their bodies are so big.
Yeah. Actually, you're right. That is the exact opposite of Goombas in the game. Goombas in the game are like 90% head with like 2 little feet.
They're mushrooms.
Yeah, essentially. That's super weird. I didn't make that connection. I'm trying to think. Is there anything else that they actually draw from the games?
There's the weird cousins of King Koopa. While not explicitly from any of the games, you can sort of very loosely base them on the Koopalings.
Kind of. And they do add them much later down the line in the Mario franchise, but there are like the Koopa siblings, like Bowser Jr. they add and things like that. But once again, that kind of came afterwards, so you can't really draw that comparison. Outside of that, I mean, I guess they're still overthrowing Bowser at the end.
Yeah.
Apparently there was an early version of the script that was a lot more faithful and had Bowser dying in a pool of lava at the end like he does in the game. Okay. Which would have been nice.
Yeah.
They don't go that way in this. They just turn him into slime because why not? So, yeah.
Ghostbusters.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yes. That's a good point. I didn't even think of that. Ghostbusters all over again. Also, maybe that's why they had the mushroom idea, honestly, because it's similar to the slime in Ghostbusters.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that could make sense. Yeah. Is there anything else? I feel like at this point we're literally just listing loose similarities.
I don't think there's much further on we can go with this without like turning our brains to fungus.
Yeah, trust the fungus.
Trust the fungus.
Ugh. But I mean, like, this is the kind of adaptation that it is. Like, it is loosely inspired, if anything. And
Yeah.
it's almost entirely just paying lip service to the game in so many respects. And while I admire taking like a beloved property in a very different direction, I think the direction they just decided to take it in is very much just jumbled and weird and gross and a weird amalgamation of everything else that has come in cinema in like the 4 or 5 years previously. Which means that, like, even if I do admire it for being a unique adaptation, I just don't think it's a good one. And I think there are good ways of doing a Super Mario Bros. Movie, which we'll talk about and do it differently, but this I just don't think is the way to go.
I feel they sort of hit diverging path of we can go faithful or we can go something unique and different. Mm-hmm. And they went to both those paths and went, well, let's try another way with that, and just went backwards again.
Yeah, sure. No, it's not very good.
No. I don't think there really is all that much left to
I mean, look,
touch on.
there was the voiceover that was added at the beginning, which apparently was done late into post-production because audience members couldn't understand what was going on. Once again, big studio note. What really annoyed me is that the pixel graphics that they use in that opening clip with the dinosaurs isn't even the same as the artwork in the games. Like that is literally like that is such an easy illusion to make.
Yeah.
Why can you not make it just look like the pixel art in the original games, like 8-bit or 16-bit or whatever? But no, they just had to take it in a completely stupid and weird and ugly different direction. Like, in many respects, it almost feels like this movie is going out of this way to distinguish itself from the fact that it is Super Mario Bros. Film. I mean, I think Bob Hoskins is well cast.
Yes.
We haven't really talked about the script, but I think the two main actors are like...
Bob Hoskins, John Leguizamo.
Fine.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Like, fantastic comparatively.
Comparatively, yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like they kind of know what movie it is, and they kind of lean into it, but at the same time, you can also kind of tell that they were drunk most of the time on set. Which
I mean, for a while there, Bob Hoskins even had his arm in a cast because he had had an accident.
Yeah.
And just went with it.
Yeah, because they just didn't even care that much. Yeah. No, it was very stupid. But no, I think he makes... He is perfectly cast as Mario.
Yes.
I can definitely say that. So
And John Leguizamo, I wouldn't say is perfectly cast as Luigi.
no.
For a Super Mario Bros. Adaptation. But for this, why not? Fuck it.
It fits.
Yeah.
Why not? Yeah. Who cares? Honestly, who cares?
And I'm just happy to see John Leguizamo because I think he's pretty neat.
Yeah, he tends to be pretty keen, pretty nice. I mean, a lot of the effects have aged incredibly poorly.
Yep.
Once again, this is a movie very much of its time, which I
Usually when we say that, we're indicating something as very sort of, racially insensitive or a little sexist. In this case, it's just, it looks terrible.
yeah. I mean, it is racially insensitive and
Oh,
sexist in some
yes.
respects.
It's all of those things as well.
Yeah, certainly. But also the effects.
Yes.
Also the effects bad. There's a reference to The Wizard of Oz, which I thought was interesting because apparently one of the original scripts was loosely inspired by The Wizard of Oz in that it is basically a road movie going through this fantastical land through the Mushroom Kingdom. I think that might have been the Drain Man script. I don't quite remember. And then there's a line in the film when he says, like, we're not in Manhattan anymore or something like that. Which is, like playing off we're not in Kansas anymore. Just because. But I mean, like, that is a classic film illusion that happens in a lot of films. So I don't think that's intentional, but I do think that was an interesting point.
If I only had a brain.
Yeah, that's what I feel like watching this movie, quite honestly. How did you feel about Dennis Hopper? Because apparently he hated this film.
Yeah, that
He
definitely
hated being on
showed.
set. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think he's hammy enough? I think he could have taken it broader, in all honesty. He feels almost... He's definitely hammy, but he feels almost too subdued for the film he's in.
He definitely is subdued. I don't know if he should have gone hammier, but I feel, if anything, he should have taken things in the opposite direction and just gone super serious.
Really?
Just because... Look, at this point... Throw anything at the wall, see what sticks. Who gives a fuck?
Part of me desperately wants to see that.
Yeah.
But I don't think it would be good. Yeah. I kind of what I wanted from it was like similar to another video game movie which we were talking about off mic, but Street Fighter. M. Bison in Street Fighter.
Yes.
When it's like,
that would have been great.
Yeah, when he just goes all in with this role and like being so conniving and evil and ridiculous, I think would have made things a lot more fun. But in a weird way, he is kind of off kilter and weird and hammy, but not enough.
Yeah. He needs to go full Bison or full Macbeth. Make things super serious.
Yeah,
Shakespearean.
Exactly. Treat Super Mario Bros. Like Shakespeare. That's honestly what I want to see. I want to see both those versions. Another thing that made me super annoying, Daisy never wears orange in the film.
Oh, yeah.
She wears purple at one point, because why not? But no, never wears orange.
You mean the princess that hatched out of an egg?
Oh yeah, that's weird.
Yeah.
That whole opening scene is super weird and gross.
Not a fan.
No, not a fan at all. Once again, don't like this movie. I find it very interesting, but I don't like it. I find it more interesting reading about the movie than I did actually watching it. Honestly, I found the research around the movie more compelling than the movie itself for the most part, because it is like you can kind of tell that it's very much fitting this generic blockbuster framework of the time, which is once again going back to how it's so inspired by Batman and TMNT and Ghostbusters. But like, this is the third act. This is when they're sneaking in. This is when they get the power-ups. Like, it's still, there's enough generic stuff in there that I think that is bad. It's just the weird creative choices around that is the one, not even redeeming quality, but the one compelling quality about it.
They followed a formula, but somehow that formula ended up being for meth.
Yes. Once again, shrooms. Shrooms. Yeah, that's true. This movie would be much, much better on shrooms. Ain't that the truth? I'll ask someone. I suspect I might know someone who has actually done that. Yeah, I mean, is there anything else you want to talk about? Like, there's really not a lot to dig into regarding adaptations, because in a lot of ways, this is an original idea with like a vague coding of Mario Brothers on top of it.
This feels like the in-between fan fiction between a serious property and a completely different property.
Yeah.
Like, going from Twilight to 50 Shades of Grey, this is that in-between one that no one talks about.
Yeah, that's a really good analogy, actually. I didn't think about that. I can really see where you're coming from when it's kind of like a weird conglomerate of one source material, but with like the esoteric, artistic inspiration of someone else. So, yeah, no, that's a good point. So, I mean, generally the main reason this movie failed was not even conceptually, for the most part, but also just because the writing and the directing were never really there to support. Even if I can admire some of its uniqueness, like, it was just never going to work because you didn't have the right talent behind it.
This only works as a cult film.
Yes.
That is the only way it's gonna get views.
Yeah, that was the best case scenario for it. Yeah, certainly. So, I mean, and I can totally see why people would enjoy watching it these days, in a similar way that people watch The Room. And even like other curious cult films, like, I mean, we talked about Clue in a previous episode a few years ago. That is a few episodes ago. That is a cult film too, but I think that is a cult film just because people genuinely think it's a good movie now. I think people think of this as a cult film, not necessarily because they think it's good, but because they think it is worth watching because of all the weird and unique and interesting things about it. So, yeah. I don't know. Curious film. Curious.
We still didn't settle the debate on whether it's a surrealist masterpiece or the worst thing imaginable. And I don't think we ever will, honestly.
I don't think that's a question we can ever answer. Honestly, like, if I was ever even going to try, like, both at the same time, both things are equally valid. It's like, it's Schrodinger's film. It's a masterpiece and a disaster at the same time.
We'll leave that up to the audience.
Yep.
And if you have any ideas, send in your answers to mediumshift@gmail.com.
Yeah.
And you could be in the draw to win a very special Bertocchi ham.
What?
I don't know.
What's a Bertocchi ham?
It's a ham by the brand Bertocchi.
Oh, that's it?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean,
that's just the generic go-to prize for some reason.
I mean, look, in all honesty, a line like that would not have been out of place in Super Mario Bros.
Yeah.
But yes, email in and we'll definitely send you a Bertocchi hat. All right, shall we move into Do It Differently then?
Sure.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, the other thing I wanted to mention briefly before we go into this, but we might be getting another Super Mario Bros. Film in the future.
Yes.
Yeah, you heard about that, I assume.
Yes.
Illumination is making a Mario Bros. Movie, which... It's going to be animated. Honestly, it makes kind of sense the way that will inevitably go. Something tells me it probably won't be very good though either. But yeah. Anyway, thought it was worth mentioning. Do it differently?
Jingle.
Jingle.
Jingle, jingle, jingle.
Jingle, jingle, jingle.
Jingle, jingle, jingle.
There we go. This movie has broken us.
Yep.
Do you want to go first or shall I?
Up to you.
All right, I'll go first. I'll cover this one. Basically for me, once again, this is taken in a fundamentally different direction. I would not make it in 1993. I would make it in the mid-2000s. I would make this a Disney animated film and basically just do Wreck-It Ralph, but Super Mario Bros. But call it not Super Mario Bros, but Super Luigi Bros. And basically make the premise of the film being it's Mario, it's inside a video game. Mario is like defeated Bowser again and saved the princess. Everyone loves Mario and things like that, but the real protagonist of the film is Luigi. And he essentially has to grapple with the fact that he's second fiddle, and he does the same thing that Wreck-It Ralph does in Wreck-It Ralph, in that he goes out into the world, into the Mushroom Kingdom, to basically make himself his own hero and to get himself out of his brother's shadow. And do it in a similar way where it's playing with the fact that it is a video game. You could do a lot of really funny elements. Even if you wanted to, you could put all of the different video Mario game properties into one. So like there's Mario Kart in there as well, Mario Party, things like that. Put it all in like this big Mushroom Kingdom video game universe, which you can explore, which I think would be really fun because it means you can go into the more kind of silly and cartoony and more ridiculous elements. This should be animated too. I just don't think Mario works live action. Fundamentally, it should always be animated. And I think, I don't know, I think there's enough of a story there that you could make something really fun out of it, even if it's going to be very reminiscent of Wreck-It Ralph. I think that would kind of be the way to go. And I think it'd honestly be better than the Illumination film too, just because I don't really like Illumination very much, I think, honestly. Yeah.
You don't want to see minions dressed up in red and blue overalls?
Oh, that's definitely what they're going to do, isn't it? I can already picture it. Like the Illumination logo at the beginning of the film, it's going to be a minion coming up dressed as Mario. Ugh. Gross. I don't look forward to seeing that on Facebook memes for the next 10 years as well. Anyway, what about you?
They do a Rabbids Mario than a Minion Mario. Because the Rabbids Mario is actually entertaining.
Mario plus Rabbids is a really great game for people who don't know. Yeah.
It's basically kid-friendly XCOM.
Yeah, that's a really good way of describing it. Oh, I love XCOM so much. But yeah, anyway, what about your do it differently?
This is going to be a little difficult for me because I'm essentially making this up on the spot.
Okay.
I did have a full thing going on before in terms of making something along the lines of Mario Odyssey and taking that sort of for a modern day Mario live action film, still surreal, but more in keeping to the games, and you can influence on that. And that has its old dinosaur thing and New Donk City and all that, and that could have been interesting and keep all things relevant. I had all that. And then you mentioned Pac-Man.
Is that why you gave me that look?
Yes.
Oh no.
So I want to make the spiritual sequel of 1988 Pac-Man movie.
Wait, 1988?
I don't know, I picked a random year.
Oh, that's like 5 years before Super Mario Bros, that's all. So it's weird to make a spiritual sequel 5 years before, but I mean, hey, you do you. Time,
honestly,
time means nothing when it comes to Super Mario Bros.
It feels like such an 80s movie. I forgot it was made in the 90s.
It does feel like an 80s movie, doesn't it? In a lot of ways.
Oh. Yeah. For some reason in my head it was 1985.
You did mention sometime in the episode, I'm going to have to go back and listen.
Yeah.
You just briefly mentioned that it was like from the 80s. And I'm like, I mean, that's not right, but you could totally see that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, no, 93.
Oh, my head is broken.
Yep, there you go. Anyway, Pac-Man.
Yep.
Spiritual
Pac-Man.
sequel that exists 5 years before the movie.
Yes, or in the 90s. You know what? It fit better in the 90s. Give it inspiration from, I don't know, fuck it, Alien.
Reebok? Oh, okay. Sure. Reebok and Aliens.
Yes.
Yep.
No, not Reebok. You're going to have to go full Adidas. We're going like evil.
This is Chad Pac-Man. Compared to Virgin Mario.
I'm thinking Pac-Man is like a, I don't know, astronaut in outer space.
Is he a real man?
Yeah.
Okay.
But like in a big helmet at the ends that's yellow and looks like the Pac-Man head.
Sure.
And the gloves of the more modern Pac-Man for some reason because time is irrelevant.
Yep, time is a flat circle.
Yep. He's being chased by ghosts, but I don't know if they're ghosts. They could just be aliens or dinosaurs again.
Dinosaurs in space as ghosts?
Dinosaurs in space as ghosts.
Sure, okay.
Or like, I don't know, make some weird cannibalism reference. Popping pills.
Why?
Doing drugs.
Why cannibalism? What has cannibalism got to do with anything?
I don't know. They're ghosts and Pac-Man eats them.
Sure.
Maybe he ate his crewmates and now he's racked by guilt and the ghosts following him. I don't know.
Ghosts are lies. I just finished watching Haunting of Hill House. There is a line at the end of that series that says, ghosts are lies and half-truths. And that's what you want to do with Pac-Man?
Sure,
Like,
why not?
It's a metaphor. It's like a subjective, realist journey of Pac-Man confronting all the ghosts of his past.
Yep.
And he has to eat
popping
them
antidepressants to...
Yes! Maybe that's
Make
what
them
Pac-Man's
disappear.
Maybe that's what Pac-Man's a metaphor for. It's medication dealing with
Yeah.
depression. Yeah. That's sad.
Oh,
Drain Man!
Pac-Man.
Pac-Man!
And then the P gets erased.
I mean, look, to be honest, I don't even know what you pitched, but I want to see
I don't know.
I want to see
I don't
it.
know either, but yeah.
Yeah.
So it has Pac-Man, Pinky, Inky, Blinky, and
Stinky? I don't know.
No,
I don't know what
Clyde.
it's called.
Clyde is the fourth
That's
one.
the one. That's the one. Yeah.
But no Clyde because fuck it. They didn't have a Peach. Who gives a shit? And there's, of course, the romantic interest.
Miss Pac-Man?
No.
Oh.
I don't know. Just pick one.
Just a name?
Just a name. Who cares? I don't know. For all I care, pick another arcade title. Galactica. His romantic interest is Galactica. Also, Snake's there for some reason.
Wait, as in, which Snake are we talking? Like Metal Gear Solid?
No.
Oh.
Snake from Snake.
Snake from Snake. Wow.
Everyone's favorite Nokia game.
I look forward to seeing the puppetry on Snake.
What? No puppetry.
Oh, just Snake? Is it just going to be Snake going in the background?
Well, it needs to be the opposite of a snake.
Okay.
You know, like the Goombas were the opposites of... He's all just head.
So
He has no body.
So it's just a snake.
And he
head.
just gets shorter through the movie.
I think this is a truly... I'm not sure if this is an amazing glimpse into your mind or into the writers of this movie. Probably a combination of the two.
Porque no los dos.
That is a reference that two people will get.
So, our entire audience?
Yeah.
Excellent.
Oh, self-burn. Those are rare.
Yeah. Fuck you, me. Shit.
Thank you for bringing this into the world. I still don't know what this movie is, but just thank you. Thank you so much. Pac-Man, 1998, starring Gene Hackman. Don't know why that was the first actor that popped into my head.
And then eventually, way down the line, we have the final in the trilogy, and it's just Space Invaders.
Just Space Invaders, yeah. Who would you cast in that?
Bob Hoskins.
Bob Hoskins again. Bring it full circle. Time is a flat circle.
Yep.
Yep.
Bob Hoskins and Tom Holland.
Bob Hoskins is Space Invader. You know those really generic posters when they have it's just like Zendaya is
Mary Jane.
Bird. I don't know. Some Illumination movie has almost certainly done that.
Unite the Seven.
Unite the seven Space Invaders. Yep. The video game arcade cinematic universe. We're here for it. Yep.
And it's all set in the medieval ages.
Yes, because of course it is.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's a catapult. I don't know.
Look, do you want to keep adding to this, or shall we move into random recommendations?
I can probably keep adding this forever.
This could probably go on for hours, in all honesty, knowing you.
Yeah.
Let's cut this off. But I'm more than happy to return to this pitch of Pac-Man the movie at a future episode.
Excellent.
Yeah, we should definitely do an episode on Pac-Man the movie. The movie doesn't exist, but we treat it like it does. Just like
Yes.
yeah. So we come in and just start talking about the film and come up with all the... We'll talk about this off mic, but that would be a fun idea. Mm-hmm. Yeah. If we ever record an episode on April 1st, that's what we're doing. Yeah.
Okay.
Great. All right. Random recommendations. I think this week, as far as I'm aware, we're actually going to be recommending the same thing. Mm-hmm. So we're not really sure when this episode is coming out because we record things very far down the line. But at the recording of this episode, this game is a couple of weeks old. People seem to love it. It's really hit the pop culture zeitgeist in some
Do we want to
ways.
say it at the same time?
Yeah.
All right. 3, 2, 1. Super
Untitled-
Mario Bros. The porn parody.
What? That's not a game. I thought you said it was a film.
Yeah, it is.
Ugh.
I just thought I'd throw that. No, you're right.
Rude. Yes.
Untitled Goose Game.
There we go. Yeah. So This game's great.
Yeah.
The best way to describe it for someone who has not played this before is you are a goose, which therefore means you are an arsehole, because all goose are arseholes implicitly. And you basically just have to go around terrorizing your village. And that is the basic premise of the game, and you just go from there. It is delightful, charming fun, while also being a very ingeniously designed stealth puzzler at the same time.
Yes.
While also being a goose. There is a button dedicated to honking.
Yes.
Like, what else can you want out of a video game, quite frankly?
And a button where you just spread your wings out, which, as of yet, I'm still yet to find, like, an in-game use for it.
There is one thing you get to use it for, as far as I'm aware.
Is it the one in the pub?
Yes, it's the one in the pub.
Okay.
Yep.
So yeah, aside from that, there's no real... But it's still a button I constantly press.
Yep, me too. I played most of the game with that button down, so... It is delightful. It is really charming.
Yes.
It seems to have hit a nerve, or not a nerve, but it seems to have, like... People have really seemed to latch onto this game in a lot of ways. And even though, like, it's very short, you could probably beat it in a couple of hours. There's a couple of things post-game to do as well, which is really nice. But for the most part, what I find the most entertaining thing about it so far is that I've just taken it around to a friend's place. I've shown him, hey, this is a game where you get to play as a goose. And then 3 hours later, we've done basically nothing but continue to terrorize these poor villagers. While also yelling Professor Goose a lot, which is a whole inside joke into itself. But what I think is really great about this game is that you can go around and, like, there are things to tick off in a to-do list, but it's kind of a sandbox game in some ways. And that so much of the charm is basically just going around and doing what you want and being an arsehole goose, which is implicitly fun to itself. So, yeah.
And it's such a quaint little, both artistic style and setting. Everything just feels like it's like a nice little British town.
Yeah. It's really soothing too.
Yeah.
It's a really relaxing game.
Until you start being an arsehole goose.
That is true. And then everyone else gets very stressed.
Yes.
And it's really charming. The animation is great. There's something about it that I don't know whether it's the fact just because it's a goose or it's because of the way the goose has been animated, but the goose is very funny.
Yes.
The game itself is very funny. Not even on a pure conceptual level, but just some of the more slapstick things that happen in it. It's really charming. It's got really great sound design that responds to how you play too, which is super great.
Yes.
And yeah, ultimately, I think all around, this is... it is a short game, which you have to keep in mind if you're going to be paying full price for it. But I think there is enough here, and it's a strong enough concept that you will almost certainly get your money's worth. Yeah.
The best comparison I've heard for it is it's essentially like a Buster Keaton silent film, but as a video game.
That's a really good way to describe it, quite frankly. It is very slapstick in that way.
Yes. And it's all very dynamic music that you mentioned, which is, I do love that just because everything picks up and sounds... And yeah, it feels like something you'd see from Buster Keaton because everything is done very subtly, but also very over the top.
Yep. Yeah, it's really, really charming and really delightful, and also a small indie developer in Melbourne, which has had huge success, which I think is always fantastic. Always love to support games like that. And I mean, I don't know where this game is when this episode comes out. Who knows? Maybe people have forgotten about it. Maybe we're into the 20th DLC pack, which I'm ultimately hoping for. We were talking about this off mic, but we really want a DLC crossover with Hitman, where it's just the goose walking around in a suit and a tie with a little barcode on the back of his head. It's going to be so cute. So,
and a little coin he throws.
Oh, yes. That's the best. But yeah, no, truly, truly delightful game.
Yes.
Yep. Oh, wonderful. Thank you to everyone who listened to this episode of Medium Shift. I'm amazed that you made it this far. Quite frankly, especially in this episode. We went on some weird rambling tangents there. But hey, I mean... It's a bad movie, but it's an interesting one to talk about, certainly. Oh, Evan's staring off into the middle distance again. We might have to
Untitled Goose Game DLC Mario.
Oh, God.
Put him in a little Mario hat and some overalls.
That'd be so adorable. I did see a mock-up for him the other day about how Goose could possibly be added to Super Smash Bros. Which would never happen, but my brain would break if it did, because that would ultimately be the best thing in the world. I don't want it so badly.
Mess with the hunk, you get the bunk.
Oh, this game's the best. We need to end this episode. This has been such a mess. Email us, mediumshift@gmail.com. We'll send you a ham, apparently. Next episode, we're going to be doing something similarly silly, but a lot better. In that we're going to be doing another kind of loose, fun look at vampire mythology.
What We Do in the Shadows.
Yeah, the TV...
The TV show based on the movie,
Yes.
not just what we do in our closets.
Yeah. I mean, technically we could do it on the film as well, because it's like based on vampire mythology. But yeah, the TV show, the new TV show, super great. Love the film. We've talked about it before. It's going to make for a fun episode. Happy, fun times. I don't even know. I don't even know what's happened. I don't know why, but like something about this episode is structured. It's just my brain is. Let's just.
It's Angry Birds all over again.
Right. Fare thee well.
Honk.
This game is so good.